It's Just Business with Steve Thomas and your host, Chris Larry.
Hello and welcome to another episode of It's Just Business on the Hogsty Network, the show where we look at the dollars and the cents of the sports media business industrial complex in all of its fall foliage. How you doing today, Steve?
Oh, it's a fine Texas day down here. I'm very excited about the start of the NFL season. That's always wonderful. The first week didn't go well for Washington. That's kind of what we thought would happen. Maybe worse, but in the ballpark. But how is New York City treating you?
Oh, good. It's a lovely fall weekend. Still summer hanging on, so should be a wonderful New York fall. New York is amazing.
See, I'm trying to think of what my next big concert's going to be. I was going to do Creed, but Creed is very expensive and I'm cheap. And I think I've said on the show before, I know I've told you that. I mean, if Jimi Hendrix came back from the dead to play one show in Houston, Texas, I'm not going if he's charging more than a couple $100. Like there's no form of entertainment. Seriously, there's no form of 2 hours of entertainment that's worth more than a couple $100 at most to me. I don't care what it is. So Creed is tonight, the day we're recording, which is Saturday, but I think I'm going to have to skip it because again, it's like $400. So I don't know, but like Yngwie Malmsteen's coming back again, but a lot of these shows are in the middle of the week and it's middle of the week is really hard for me. So, I mean, artists out there, get your act together and do more shows on Friday and Saturday, please. The public service announcement for those who work a lot.
Well, Steve, I'm not going to give away all my dark arts, but hit me up in the back channel because I might be able to get you in for free to the Yngwie Malmsteen show when it hits Houston.
Oh, I think I know what you're saying. I get it. Yes. Yeah. Yes.
So let me know.
I will, because that's fun. I'm all about free, and I think I know where you don't want to say it on the air, but I know what's going with this.
It's a similar world, but it's actually not through my wife.
Oh, it's not. I thought you were.
No, it's not direct.
Like
it's not. It's adjacent. It's wife adjacent. But it's not directly through the wife.
Yngwie's a guy. I don't even know his music that well, but he's such a talent. I just want to see him play. I just want to get up, see him shred for, an hour and a half, just once in my life. That's it.
Well, let me know.
I will do that. That may entice me to do a late weekday night if I can get in to see Yngwie for free. I knew one of my old guitar teachers. I only had one guitar teacher. I'm mostly self-taught, but I took like 6 months of lessons. And one of the guys, when I was like 13, and one of the guys in that store had dealt with Yngwie. One of like the instructors and everything. And they said Yngwie was like the most conceited, arrogant person ever. He said that this was obviously a long time ago. He said he took Yngwie to some club and all he did was like bash the player on stage. I'm better than him and he can't do this and that, and which it's kind of fits the brand image he presents.
Without saying much more, I'll say that tracks.
That's what I thought. Yngwie's not a guy I want to go up to and say, "Hey, I play too, Yngwie." He'd go, "Yeah, whatever."
So there we go. So we just solved Steve's concert. I think I called it one other time, that equation between concert, how much Steve will pay, right? There's some kind of like algorithm, some kind of algebraic formula there.
It is. It's basically, does cheapness win out? And for me, cheapness almost always wins out.
There you go. So I'll see if I can do free. I can't promise anything, but I might be able to help you out. Some financial entanglements.
Need free. Yeah, one guy who doesn't need free.
We got a couple star players in the league. Sort of week one, kind of got into some kerfluffles. Maybe we'll call them that. A little bit athletes behaving badly. We'll start with the big one, and that is looks like Deshaun. The early 2020s are still haunting Deshaun Watson.
Sheesh. All right. So Deshaun Watson has had yet another lawsuit filed against him in Harris County by the same attorney, Tony Buzbee, who, to review, Tony Buzbee, a year and a half ago, maybe now, had 30 separate women who he filed petitions on behalf of all of them against Deshaun Watson, alleging various degrees of sexual misconduct against him. And all of those cases, basically, maybe 25 of the 30 were exactly the same. The allegation was he tracked this women down on Instagram or some other social media, convinced them, and mostly they were like either athletic trainers or masseuses or kind of in that world. And he would meet them somewhere, and then they would end up alleging that he committed some form of sexual assault or sexual misconduct against them. And there were various degrees. There were 3 or 4 of them that were much worse than the others. He got charged criminally, and the district attorney here, who I know her personally, did not get the grand jury to indict, mostly because there was no hard evidence of any of it. It was the star quarterback testimony versus that of some random woman, and they didn't get indictments. But there are all these lawsuits. Deshaun eventually settled them all for undisclosed amounts, which added up to a lot. And then the Cleveland Browns did something really stupid and gave him a $230 million 5-year contract, fully guaranteed. So now this brings us to and he's been hurt and not done well. And it's been basically a disaster for Cleveland. So that brings us to today, this week. Busby filed another lawsuit on behalf of yet another Jane Doe. This one is much more serious. This one is not one of his masseuse cases. This was a date that, incidentally, this petition says it was arranged by an agent of Watson. Yeah, and I don't think they necessarily mean a sports agent. They call the guy Eric in here, I believe it was. But anyway, this Eric fella arranged a meeting. They met in July of 2020. They eventually agreed to a date on October 10th of 2020. Watson wants her to meet him at a big mall here in the Houston area called the Galleria. She doesn't want to do that. She doesn't want to meet him in public. So he meets her at her apartment. She is not ready, according to the allegation here, when he arrives. So she brings him in, sits him down in the living room, and she goes to the bathroom to keep doing her makeup, leaves the door open, is talking to him. And incidentally, he had blown up at her on the phone when he couldn't find her apartment. And it says he was aggressively yelling and screaming into the phone, and that he doesn't have time for this. So she's a bit on edge. So she's talking to him from the bathroom to kind of calm him down and whatnot. And he's not responding. So eventually she comes out. And Chris, would you care to guess what state he was in when she comes out of the bathroom? How she finds him? Would you care to take a stab at it? It's not that much of a guess.
States of undress.
Completely undressed, laying on the bed, totally naked. Yeah, lying face down. And then he take another guess at what he asked her to do.
Something in the erotic massage family.
There you go. He asks her to massage his butt, and she says no, but eventually caves in and starts to massage, his upper back, or his back rather. And then he gets mad again and insists. And so eventually, she caves in, but then he turns over onto his front, of course, and he is fully aroused, as one might suspect, because this is his fetish. And at this point, it gets really, really dark here. No jokes. And so then it says she freezes in fear, unsure what to do. But to quote the petition, before the Jane Doe can answer, Watson grabs her leg and positioned her so she was lying down, and partially disrobes the woman and penetrated her without consent, implicit or explicit. Then it says Watson roughly assaulted the Jane Doe for several minutes in a, quote, missionary position before he grabbed her and flipped her over. And he continues, and then it says she finally escaped she quickly runs to her dresser to grab a heavy piece of decor for self-defense and yelled at him to get out. And enraged, Watson storms out. And so then what they're alleging here is sexual assault and battery, and then intentional infliction of emotional distress. And they don't name a damage figure, but it obviously names punitive damages, because that's the intentional infliction of emotional distress is punitive. So that is the petition. So that is a lot darker. I'm not trying to be gross here for, we're sort of a family show, but it doesn't expressly state the body part with which he penetrated her. But it sounds like what they're saying is this is a rape case. They're using the term sexual assault, but in criminal law, there's a difference between rape and sexual assault. And what this reads like is a rape case. I don't know why she hasn't reported this to the law enforcement here or not, but that is the case. I don't even know what to say about this guy anymore, honestly. I mean, this guy does not belong in the NFL. They need to and they need to ban him for life, as far as I'm concerned. You can't let a player get away with this just because he's a good quarterback. Thoughts? And for the record, before you start, I'm sorry. This is an allegation, so let's say that. Don't sue us, Deshaun.
Yeah, and in a civil lawsuit, right? We said, like you said,
this is a civil lawsuit. This is not a criminal case. Again, I don't know why she hasn't reported this, but this is a civil lawsuit.
And what's the year that this was alleged? It's like
2020. No, 20. So it's right in the middle, right in the heart of all the other ones.
What's gonna the thing that's gonna happen here is that, yeah, I think that he will be disciplined and they'll be able to rid themselves of Deshaun Watson here. And when I say they, it's sort of the NFL, the Shield, and obviously the Cleveland Browns. But, we have to be a little bit honest here where, he actually isn't a good quarterback. And that's probably one of the main reasons why we're going to start to see this get accelerated, because the reality is the Cleveland Browns would love to get out of underneath this contract. They made
they have only themselves to blame for the contract.
Of course.
Their contract was absurd. $230 million fully guaranteed. The only one who has a fully guaranteed contract in the NFL is Kirk Cousins, who, by the way, not great, performs at a higher level than Deshaun Watson does.
Certainly since the Cleveland move. But what I'm saying is makes that worse, that they're going to get this exit path from their own horrendous decisions. That was a horrendous decision morally. It was a horrendous decision economically. It was a horrendous decision for the league. It was a horrendous decision for other quarterbacks, quite frankly.
It sets a terrible precedent because you have a guy who has all these sexual misconduct allegations against him, and you're going to reward the dude before the cases were settled or dismissed, by the way.
Yeah.
And with a fully guaranteed
and tailor the contract so that he could show less income for stretches of time,
which they did.
That could affect the damages.
Which they did. And now these NFL contracts have outs. Okay, it's fully guaranteed, but my guess, I haven't read it, but my guess is there's probably an out for criminal convictions and some types of misconduct.
I've seen it confirmed multiple places that there will be there if. So, and now you got to see what lines up. Now what lines up the best interests of all line up towards one thing: the league, the team. So I think the league will expedite this, and they'll get him into whatever disciplinary jail, league jail, that gives Cleveland the contractual right to get out of the contract. And I would say before we're watching the Detroit Lions on Thanksgiving morning or early afternoon, Deshaun Watson will be out of the league.
I mean, if there is a God, yes. The NFL, however, has typically taken a long time to investigate. So I don't know. I mean, I hope they make that deadline, but I don't know if they will. But let's just talk a little bit about NFL discipline. So the NFL, the CBA gives the NFL a very low standard of proof through which they can initiate discipline. It basically amounts to, if they have reason to believe that the person did something bad, then they can enact discipline. So they don't really need to wait for this lawsuit to be adjudicated here at all. They probably do need to talk to the Jane Doe, probably, and get her story. And if they believe her story under the CBA, that's really enough. That would really be enough for them. Even before this lawsuit's over. So I would think you're probably right, but historically, they've taken a long time to do this. But in this case, I think he's a black eye in the NFL. It makes the whole league look bad that this guy has gotten away with all this. The problem, though, is this. He's already been disciplined for the 30 other cases. So now we're talking about just this case alone. And so is this one case alone worth throwing him completely out of the league after they let him off the hook, essentially with a minimum suspension for 30 other cases? I will say that this, of the 30, this is the worst one. I read all of them, read every petition. And again, I told you guys there were like 3 or 4 that were worse. This is worse than all of them. Because if I'm right and you read between the lines there, he's literally alleging rape, or she is literally alleging rape, and none of the rest of them were rape cases.
Yeah, that's why I think, I mean, the comp, and I know there was video involved, but I think the comp about when the NFL wants to move fast, it will move fast. And by the way, on a better player was Ray Rice.
Yeah, there was video, like and it's easy.
Right.
Yeah.
Now right. But it does show to me, like when the NFL wants to move fast and when all best interests are pointing in one direction, things happen a little faster.
Well,
I don't see the players' union putting up much of a fight. You know,
well, why would they fight for him?
Right. That's what I'm saying. So like the skid is greased.
Yeah. Now Watson, for his case, if I were advising Watson, and I'm sure Rusty Hardin probably has this case too. Rusty Hardin was his attorney before. I've met him a couple times. He is sort of the renowned criminal defense attorney in the state of Texas. And he's taken Rusty's taken all of the big name athlete cases. He had Roger Clemens, all those cases like that always go to Rusty in Texas, go to Rusty Hardin. If I was Rusty Hardin, I would tell Watson, settle this case forthwith. Let's not even wait. There's no reason to do discovery. There's no reason to do anything. Pay her the money and let it go and get rid of it immediately. That's what I would do if I were him.
Especially before they void your contract.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, why fight this? If it's a complete, truly is, I mean, again, this is just an allegation. If this is a complete and total lie, that's one thing. But I suspect that a guy with a reputation like Busby, who is, for the people who don't understand this, he is one of the handful, maybe top 3-4 plaintiffs attorneys in the city of Houston. He ran for mayor once. He's got a reputation that he cares about. And I would venture a guess to say that Busby would not take this case if he wasn't convinced. So I would lean towards the basic facts of this probably being true rather than
he already got good payouts for his other clients, right?
And
like he was successful for them.
Yes. And I just don't think he would want to put his name on someone who didn't have credibility. So to some extent or another, I would tend to think the basics of this are probably right. So I think the NFL should act quickly. I think they need to talk to this woman. They need to contact Busby, get her to get interviewed with the NFL's investigators and get it over with immediately. And let's get Watson out of the league forever.
And the Cleveland Browns will be like, yes, please. I mean, you got to remember, this is a team that, inserted Joe Flacco and went on a tear. So, I mean, it's got to be one of the worst examples of karma of all time.
I have no sympathy for the Cleveland Browns whatsoever. They did this to themselves. What kind of organization brings a player in with a huge contract under these circumstances with no shame at all?
And now they're going to get off scot-free and probably improve.
Probably so. Yeah. And because Watson at one point in time was a pretty good quarterback. I mean, he wasn't a Hall of Famer, but he was a solid quarterback. But, I mean, he hasn't produced. Part of it, maybe he was injured. He was massively distracted. It's Cleveland, and Cleveland has traditionally been, where quarterbacks go to die, if you historically, like Washington. All of that, but still it hadn't worked out. And so they definitely want to get out of it. And he's got, let me think, how many years? I've got the contract open here. Let's see. So his contract, so it runs through 2026, but it's also got 2 void years at the end. So they've got 3 more seasons of this. So they would love to dump him.
Yeah,
dump him.
Yeah, it would be the biggest, the biggest salary cap get out of jail free thing I've ever seen.
And it depends on how strong the guarantee is. And that's what we don't know unless we've read it. And we haven't read it. It is fully guaranteed. But like I said, and what Chris has said is that NFL contracts have outs for stuff like this, like the Michael Vick contract, for example, when Michael Vick went to jail for the dogfighting case. because otherwise, you know what his dead cap is this year? He's got a $200 million dead cap. Like they couldn't cut him if they wanted to. They couldn't cut him.
No, this
They
is
just don't.
literally the only way
Yes.
they get out of this contract. It's
Right.
the only route.
Right. They literally do not. His dead cap is almost as much as the entire salary cap this year. So it's just not possible unless they could get out of it for some reason, through some misconduct allegation.
If he stays whatever, like this allegation doesn't happen, he stays, relatively, controversy, lawsuit free, and just continues to perform at a very subpar level, it sets the Cleveland Browns franchise back a decade, and they're actually pretty stacked with talent. So it's almost like a double sunk cost.
Yeah, I mean, even in the final year of his contract, he's got a $100 million dead cap. So this is the only way. Even his void year is 27 million in dead cap. And his void cap it in his void year is 27 million. It's just crazy the stupidity of this contract. So,
and so that makes me wonder if this was let's see,
a setup.
No. I'm just trying to think of a good quarterback comp. Let's say this was Jalen Hurts. Right.
Okay.
There wouldn't be everyone's best interest to get him out of the league, right? Like,
No.
part of my point is the reason why this will be like a rush to the door, like everyone, is on board, get him out, is because he's actually a bad quarterback. So like that calculus, like sort of how you set it up. Oh, it's just because he's a star quarterback. True, all those true, but actually the reason here is because he's actually bad. So it's the best interest of everybody, including on the field, which is a driver of these situations. If he was a top 10 quarterback in every other way right now, they'd be all kinds of people equivocating themselves and talking about what an allegation means, etc.
Well, my point was he was a star when they signed the contract. Yeah. And they thought he had the potential to become a top franchise.
But if he was playing like that right now, it would be a different conversation.
For a minute, I truly thought you were going down the Oliver Stone rabbit hole and you were about to allege some conspiracy between Busby and the Browns. It's like, what are you talking about?
My conspiracy was if he was playing like an all pro, we'd be having a radically different conversation. Not you and me necessarily. Well, talking about a different conversation.
Yeah, I thought for a minute. It's like, are you saying Tony Busby's in cahoots with the Cleveland Browns and is putting his law license on the line just so they can?
The Bengals are behind it all. Exactly,
the Browns. It's the Cleveland Browns. It's the Steelers are trying to sabotage the Browns. Yeah, that's it. So we'll see what that. So from a legal perspective, this was filed on the 9th of September, and I don't even know if this probably hasn't even been served on him yet, most likely, because it takes a while and he's not even in Texas. So that's a process to get somebody served in another state. You basically have to file it in a court in that state and get the court to say, order him to be served basically. And none of that has happened. So you give a month for that at least, and then he'd have a month to answer it, the lawsuit. And so now you're talking about before anything could happen in this lawsuit, you're talking about the middle of November at the earliest before you would see Watson take any legal action with this lawsuit, at least, probably longer. So that's the status. But again, my advice to him is don't wait for it to get served. Just settle it now. That's if I were advising Watson, I would accept service. Tell the plaintiff's attorney you can let Rudsey Harden accept service of process and then make a settlement offer that fast. That's what I would do.
There's lots of different ways this could go. I think my one prediction on them is it's going to happen relatively fast.
I just meant from a service and a legal, because then in Texas he's got basically a month to file an answer. It's defined a little bit differently. So if he's served, say in the middle of October, then he would have till basically the middle of November to.
But even that's an aggressive timeline. So even with all of the crossing of I's and dotting of T's, I still think things are going to move.
Yeah, but the reason why I was saying I don't know if they'll get it done by the Thanksgiving is that the NFL may want to wait until he's filed an answer. And Busby then is willing to produce this lady to their investigators. That's why I said I don't know about November. I mean, he may make it through the season.
And we don't know what internal things are between Watson's people in the league,
No,
and also
or the
vis-a-vis the
Browns.
contract. Right. So there could have been internal agreements that the
There
public
could have
doesn't
been
know about, that
this could have been set up
smashes.
ahead of time. Yeah, it
Yeah.
could have been.
So they may have like the last straw clause or whatever.
Yeah, because these contracts aren't public. The ones I've read that I've come across have been fairly routine, and Watson's in routine. We don't know what it says.
And the NFL could have said your eligibility is contingent on, and this, no more lawsuits,
Possibly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it could be in the contract. This is fully guaranteed, except, however, if you get charged with sexual assault again, and the other thing before we go with this is there going to be a criminal complaint filed on this? I mean, it's been 4 years, but for something like this, I'm sure it's probably still within the statute of limitations in Texas, so she probably could. But I mean, the other women got poured out of court rapidly. Didn't even make it through the grand jury, so she may not want to go through that. That may be why she hasn't done it.
Yeah,
right. And if he settles with her, then it's probably he'll probably pull the Kobe Bryant maneuver and somehow throw in the settlement agreement that she can't testify, even though you really can't do this, but she can't testify in front of, a criminal in a criminal proceeding. That's what Kobe did, even though you're really not supposed to.
So the other NFL player that was hitting the front page news or pan sports was Tyreek Hill in this, his Sammy Hagar moment on his way. What was the golf? What was the golf guy's name again?
Was Scotty Scheffler.
Yeah. So, these players getting, using their fast cars to get to where they need to be. It turned into a bit of an incident. And now, here we are. This is going to be a storyline for a couple weeks at least.
Yeah. So what happened here? Tyreek Hill is driving on game day to the stadium in Miami. In what kind of car was it? McLaren? I think it was a McLaren.
Yeah, I don't even know.
What Alex East called a Batman mobile. Anyway, and he's going 60 miles an hour in a 40-mile-an-hour zone right outside the stadium where the cops are already lined up. It's like under 3 hours before game day. And so the police are either they've opened the parking lot or getting ready to open the parking lot, and there's traffic control and all that there. And he's like a moron driving 60 miles an hour through here. So he gets pulled over. And this is the point at which normalcy stops. So a normal, sane person who gets stopped by the police does not argue with the police, instead takes the ticket and is quiet and then moves on. But Tyreek Hill doesn't do that. He had cops an attitude from the start. He argues them about rolling down his window, won't roll down his window. And by the way, I mean, the reason why the police want the window rolled down is the windows were very blacked out. They can't see what's going on in there. They don't know if you have a weapon, if there's someone else in the car. They want to be able to see. That's why, yes, it is a lawful order. I saw people arguing about whether it's a lawful order. You have the general obligation to comply with the police during a traffic stop. Okay. And that's why they want the window down. So he didn't want to roll the window down. And so then they told him to get out of the car for the same reason, their safety. And he wouldn't get out of the car. He's arguing with him about that. He's, resisting. And so they eventually had to forcibly drag him out, threw him on the ground, handcuffed him. They ended up not charging him with resisting. They gave him a reckless driving ticket, I think it was, and speeding. While all that was happening, two of his teammates saw it and stopped. And so now they're standing on the sidewalk. And the cops are telling them to get back. Certainly the police had, I would say, a less than professional demeanor about them as soon as he started not cooperating, but that doesn't make it any more right. And so my view of this is 100% Tyreek Hill's fault. All he had to do was say, whoops, I'm sorry, officer. I apologize. Here's my license. And then that's it. And do what they say. And none of this would happen. So despite the fact that I think the cops probably could have shown in their use of their word, in their attitude could have been slightly more calm. This is 100% Tyreek Hill's fault. That's my take on it.
Well, the main officer has been suspended 6 times.
Yeah, again, I mean, There's
the most for 20 days. So there is a track record of bad behavior and a track record of bad behavior in the moment on both sides. We're not.
Yeah,
so
he was a bit arrogant.
Six suspensions for disciplinary actions. This police officer
but if you watch the video, Tyreek Hill caused all of this to happen. He 100% of it. He did not have to. If he hadn't acted the way he acted, and if he just rolled his window down and left it down like they asked, none of that would have happened. They would have given him a ticket, and that would have been it. He wouldn't even have to get out of the car at all. He would just gotten a speeding ticket.
Maybe true. There's obviously a certain logic to that, but you can't deny that this officer in question has a hair trigger. There's
absolutely
documented record of it.
Absolutely.
In many police forces, he may not even still be employed. 6
I don't know
actions?
I don't know. The line about that, but I mean, that's a lot. Certainly, it seems like that's probably way more than other most officers, presumably. But again, I think that's a red herring here. I think the lesson for people is comply and be reasonable in a traffic stop, and you can go fight the ticket later. Okay, you can fight the ticket, you can file a complaint, you can sue the department later. But if you argue and be a jerk to the police, this is what's going to happen to you. Don't fight it in the moment. That is the lesson. No matter what the cop says, don't fight it in the moment, because you will not win.
I would certainly not argue against that strategy.
He could have filed a complaint later. He could have filed a complaint later.
Right.
So that's the thing. And I also give Tyreek Hill no quarter whatsoever, because he's a scumbag as a human being. Remember, he has a domestic violence conviction. He punched his pregnant girlfriend in the stomach. He told that woman that their son needs to be afraid of him, and he's been arrested several times. He's not worthy of.
He's got a track record for sure.
Yeah, and this kind of this is a par for the course with this guy. This kind of conduct.
But this is going to be, I think this will be going to stay a storyline. Although,
I don't know. I think it's already, I almost think we're doing it too late already. I mean, what's left to be said. What I didn't like was Tyreek Hill's press conference basically blamed it on the cops. When are you going to take responsibility for being a complete a-hole at the stop? When are you going to say I didn't watch
it, but he did. I mean, at least the written report said he did claim some responsibility.
Yeah, he really downplayed it though. Moral of the story is, kids, don't argue with the police in the moment. Argue later, after you get the ticket, then fight it that way. That's the moral of the story.
Or start 45 minutes earlier to get to your job.
Or get there on time. But I would suspect if you're driving a McLaren, you're probably not always driving the speed limit. And I'm certainly no angel when it comes to speed either. But
right, we are talking 60 and a 45 is not egregious.
No, it's not. But it may be when you're outside of a football stadium on game day when people are coming into the stadium. But again, I don't argue with the times I've gotten tickets. I don't argue with the police. Just take it and move on. Especially Tyreek Hill can afford it.
The next up is kind of the zombie league. Pac-12 was down to 2. Now they've added another 6, right?
No, 4.
4. So the zombie conference is coming back to life.
The zombie. I like it. I like you've called them the zombie conference. I love it.
It can't be killed.
It can almost. It was on his deathbed for a while. Okay, so we saw this, and it's all over. But we saw this in Bleacher Report. Boise State, Colorado State, among 4 schools to join Pac-12, leave Mountain West, by Mike Chiari, dated September 12th, 2024. Now, if you recall, the Pac-10 got abandoned by everybody, just about, including 2 teams that went to the ACC, which is amazing to me. Cal and Stanford moved to the ACC. I don't know how you have West Coast teams in the Atlantic Coast Conference.
Words don't mean anything, Steve.
Yeah, apparently not. And so what they were left with was it Oregon State and Washington State? That was the Pac-12 up to 5 minutes ago. Oregon State and Washington State, and they kind of cut a loose deal with the Mountain West, and they filled their schedule with a bunch of Mountain West teams.
They've been dating for a while.
Yeah, they've been kind of loosely dating, say they were, kind of in the friend zone, shall we say? But now they are cohabitating because what has happened here is all of the good teams from the Mountain West basically have moved over to the Pac-10, Pac-12. So Boise State, as we all know, has been in the national consideration on several different years, and I think disrespected by the national media. San Diego State, Fresno State, Colorado State. So now that is the Pac-12, those 6 teams. So it's not enough. 6 teams is not enough to be a conference. So they're going to have to find 2 more teams somewhere to remain a conference and sort of get back into the graces of calling themselves a Power 5 conference. So I don't know who's left, who else they can go grab.
The article references Memphis, America. I've got the quote I wanted to read somewhere else, but the article does actually say the next conference that they may kind of start to cannibalize, in Memphis and I think Tulane were the 2 teams.
Yeah. So I have the quote. It's at the end. It says, "It is unclear what other schools of Pac-12 could target in order to reach the official conference status, which is 8. But the American Athletic Conference has several programs that could be appealing, including Memphis, Tulane." So sounds like that was the author just kind of forming his opinion rather than reporting a rumor.
I think it's where they see the weakness, right? Like what other conferences are about to crumble, what programs might want to be on the move. I mean, there's probably it's like hunting gazelle, they probably know where the couple sick leagues are.
Yeah, but my question would be, does a conference that includes Memphis, Tulane, Washington State, Oregon State, Boise State, Nevada, Fresno State, and Colorado State, is that a Power 5 conference to you? That's a second tier conference to me.
Probably, but if they can get to the numbers they need, then they how much worse than the ACC are they?
Probably
because that's
in
their
the
goal,
ballpark.
right? Right. Yeah. That's what they want to be, the ACC. That's their first goal.
And the rule, by the way, is that there has to be 8 in order to be recognized as an official FBS conference, as stated in this column. I guess there's no way they're going to get back to the upper levels immediately. This is like a long-term rebuild. It's kind of like, if we can move to a music example, Foreigner. I don't know if your wife does Foreigner or not.
No.
Okay. So Foreigner is a band that has 0 original members anymore. It is a sanctioned cover band running around playing Hot Blooded and calling themselves Foreigner. They will never be at the level of Foreigner with Lou Gramm and Mick Jones, the real band, playing real Foreigner songs. I would argue that the Pac-12 with those 8 teams is the Foreigner cover band. I mean, they can pretend, but it's going to take them years and years, I think, to get back to prominence, to have teams. Those teams now cannot compete with the Big 12 or the SEC, not even close.
No, I mean, there's no argument that would disagree with that. But a couple of things that I found interesting in this article that might speak to how some of these leagues may even reconfigure themselves even faster over the coming decade is that the Mountain West is getting $100 million. $111 million for these teams to leave. And I'd never heard about that sort of exit tax.
Kind of makes sense. So, if you're going to leave before the agreements are up, you got to pay a fee.
But that means there's a market here. So if the market figures out, some of these conferences can incubate teams, they graduate up, but they get paid out. You can almost see, to me, that means I could see chunks of teams moving, even faster, especially because if the conferences that are left behind they're getting paid out, it's almost like, I don't know, you'll just see these things reconfigure themselves every 5 years because the money, it's just another market, right? It's almost like it's like tickets, concert or game tickets on the secondary market, right? Now we're creating this whole market that didn't exist, which is basically these conferences can get paid. Oh, we have 2 or 3 teams that are starting to have, aspirations. We'll just sell them off to, the ACCs and the Pac-12s of the world that are always looking to grow.
Remember, it's amateur athletics, folks. My question would be, who's paying the 111 million?
Well, in this case, it says that each team each team's cut of the exit tax is 17 million.
I know. Yeah, that's my point. Yeah. So that's a lot of money. That's
exactly my point. The tuition.
Like Iowa State or whatever, Southeast Louisiana State cannot necessarily just fork over 17 million and go join the Pac-12.
No, but do some of these?
But does the Pac-12 kick in money for it?
Well, they actually do say the Pac-12 is going to subsidize those exits. Yeah,
but I think your point is valid. I don't think it's going to open up like free agency of football because it just costs too much. But I think we could enter into an era where it becomes more common, because it was very uncommon before a few years ago. It seemed like a team would move every once in a while, but maybe not. It wasn't common at all, but it seems like recently it's been very common. Like Texas and Oklahoma left the Big 12. Now you've got 4 teams from the Mountain West going to the fake Pac-12. I mean, it seems like, and there's been teams on the East Coast that moved around too. So it has become much more common for sure.
15 years ago, this was unheard of, and I might even be overshooting it by 5.
I think you are.
Yeah. So like, this is crazy town. And so now if there are financial incentives for the comings and goings that everyone feels compensated, then I just think, that'll grease the skids on this. And it'll be really, that's what, to me, I could care less about whether the Pac-12 exists well. Is it a Power 5, whatever. I really don't care, but I do actually think it's going to be super fat. I do think their quest for relevance again is a super interesting story.
Isn't there at some point a limit to how much money these boosters are willing to pay for this? Because the boosters, you're right, like the 17 million per, are ultimately coming probably from boosters. Because certainly, like for state institutions, the state isn't going to pay that. So it's got to come from.
You already have these legalized, whatever.
I'm not saying it's not legal. I'm saying, is there a limit to the amount of money that the boosters will? They've already got to buy the players. The boosters are buying the players through the NIL collectives, and those are just boosters and, entering marketing agreements or whatever it is. So paying that now, and that's a lot of money. And a bunch of Michigan players just filed a lawsuit this past week, alleging that Michigan owes them $50 million from a generation ago because, they were taking advantage of those name and likeness. I mean, the name and likeness thing is not over. And so they've got to pay that. Now they've got to pay these moving fees. What I wonder is, at some point, are these boosters going to say enough is enough? We're done.
I don't think
not as a collective they won't, but like how much, are they going to lose some money just because people get tired of it?
Well, that's where I find that the legitimacy here is interesting, because legitimacy actually raises that ceiling, right? If these things, when these things all were like scattered in the corners, then I think there was a limit, right? Because you could only launder so much. It's complicated to launder this much money.
Legal laundering.
Right now, the system is basically set up, to do that, kind of at scale. That just raised. So I think right now we're in that like finding out how much we're going to go here. What is the new ceiling? So I think eventually you'll be right. Like eventually who knows, but there may be some limit, or that limit is just such a small amount of teams that we'll get to the sort of hyper league concept at some point soon anyway. But I think it's going to be a while before we know what ultimately is the patience for these collectives and the legalized boosterism.
Yeah. Well, and I think the question would be, something we've been talking about for years on this show, is what is the end game here? Because, let's face the SEC and the Big Ten are miles ahead of all these other conferences, miles ahead. And the NCAA is poorly run and stupid. And what you and I have predicted for years was that eventually they're going to break off and just have their own little super league of fake amateur athletics. With their own contracts, their own governance, their own everything. I still think that is going to happen at some point. And I think that would be the ultimate end game for all of this.
And I also think there's a growing middle class in college football that also make that appealing. So, okay, sure. SEC or whatever, go do your thing. Right. But I'll think my alma mater, James Madison, went from whatever Division 1 AA, with Division 2, whatever they called them, that for, went through a couple different names, won some championships at that level, jumped 3 years ago into Division 1, has been almost immediately successful. And what it's done to Harrisonburg in an already growing campus has been insane. So that move totally made sense for them. Now, I mean, they were ranked, I think, at one point last year. So
they were in basketball, were they not?
Yeah, both in football. Yeah. They actually arguably had a better season in football. So they lost one game, and they were in a bowl game. So
that's right. Yeah.
In just 3 years, they went from whatever, not the, Division 2, let's just call it. I know it wasn't called that, to Division 1, made the jump. And it is the cottage industry now that does for that university in that town of Harrisonburg. I think that's why you see more teams being aggressive, more universities being aggressive here, is because you don't have to, you can let the big boys be the big boys. There's still I think the middle class is growing in college football.
Well, I don't blame San Diego State and Nevada and Boise State and whatever.
Right. They're leveling up.
Yeah, of course they are. I mean, they're going to the Mountain West has been a mid-tier conference. Not the worst, but a mid-tier conference. And they've had, Boise State's pretty much been the only team. I guess Utah used to be in the Mountain West, right? Yeah. One point in time. I mean, Boise State and Utah were in the national consideration, but no other team ever has been in that conference. And so I think what they're doing is, that they put themselves in a conference, and even at least by name as a Power 5 conference, they get more attention. They can recruit better, and they'll become better. So that's kind of your point. Yeah, they're leveling up, but I just want to know, like I said, I mean, are we entering an era of school free agency, or are we just going to fix the Pac-12 and that's it? I think leans more towards a free agency era.
Oh, a little bit. I think so. I mean, you might have to count those things in like 5-year blocks, because even in this current deal, I think they don't start playing in the Pac-12 till 2026, I believe. So even obviously not this college football season, but it's not even next college football season. So these things 2026.
Yeah,
because these things take time. It's complicated. So I think if you think of those if you think of those free agency cycles here as 5-year blocks, I think that's probable.
Yeah. So that's the more interesting part of this. What happens in Mountain West is whatever it is, what it is. But the possibilities for college sports is what's more interesting. I thought, I'm totally wrong. Shows you what I know. I thought because we saw some rumors that the Mountain West might just buy the trademarks and the copyrights from the Pac-12 and just become the Pac-12 conference. That's what I thought was more likely than this. Shows you what I know, but it kind of like almost the corporate merger of conferences. I thought that was possible, but that's not what happened here. Certainly this is less complicated. So now the question would be like, what does the Mountain West do? Do they go recruits like Southeast Georgia State to, or whatever, some like tier Division 2 school? Because they're losing force. That's a fairly large conference, I think, numbers wise, but they're going to need to fill the slots themselves.
Or maybe, maybe they just sell all their teams off to the highest bidder. They pocket that exit fees amongst whoever, gets the payout, and they just close the Mountain West.
And they head to the strip club with the money.
Right. I mean, like, who knows? I mean, they're not all going to continue to exist.
Probably not.
Or at least not exist within the realm of college football.
And I want to say the Mountain West used to be called something else, by the way. I don't think it's always been the Mountain West.
Was it Big Sky?
No, well, there is a Big Sky.
I think, yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't Big Sky. You're going to make me look this up on the fly here real fast. I want to say it was called something else, but anyway, I mean, I think we said what we're going to say here. I mean, that's the Mountain West Conference. So give me 1 second here. Let's see. I can't remember.
I can't wait till an East Coast private school joins them.
Well, I know. Well, it's not as bad as it's just the same as Stanford being in the ACC, Western Athletic Conference. Okay, so the Mountain West. Yeah, it was the WAC. So, but what happened was, kind of what you were saying. The WAC existed, and then the WAC teams formed the Mountain West, and the WAC went away. So that could happen again. I mean, the Mountain West could die. Those are the remaining teams. It looks like so we've got Air Force, BYU, which is gone, Colorado State, which is now gone, San Diego. This is the charter members: Air Force, Brigham Young, Colorado State, San Diego State, New Mexico, Nevada, Las Vegas, Utah, and Wyoming. So of those, they just lost Colorado State, San Diego State, and Nevada. So that leaves Air Force and Utah and Wyoming as the last remaining charter members of the Mountain West.
And it could just be that they haven't negotiated fully. They may be the next, few to walk the same path.
Yeah. Well, so what currently remains in total is Air Force, Nevada, Reno, New Mexico, San Jose State, Utah State, and Wyoming. That is what remains, because it was the schools that left were Boise State, let's get it right here. So the schools that left were Boise State, Colorado State, Fresno State, and San Diego State. Yeah. So that leaves the two Nevada schools: New Mexico, San Jose State, Air Force, and Utah and Wyoming. So it's a conference, but not a good one. So they're going to need to recruit.
Right. Or fire sale.
Or fire sale. Yeah. Sell Air Force to, like the Big 12 or whatever, and, watch them get smoked.
Yeah. Getting your butt kicked in a bigger conference is better than winning constantly in a smaller conferences with these universities.
Well, I see I don't think any of those teams that are left are worthy of joining Big 12, Power 5 conferences. So they didn't need to sell themselves to some other mid-tier conference.
Yeah. Speaking, we're still, as many of the dollars we're talking about, we're still talking about, small change compared to the NFL. And just to sort of like follow up here, I know we're probably running a little long, but and believe me, I would love to not talk about private equity in the NFL, but
we have to.
We have to, because literally almost 2 weeks to the day that we talked about this in the last recording of the podcast, we already have Stephen Ross jumping all over this, selling as much, or looking to sell as much as 15% stake in the Dolphins, based on a $7 billion valuation. So you can already see that the owners, and he won't be the last, that were lining up to hit the cash machine, basically.
Yeah. And okay. So the story we have comes from that idiot Mike Florio, my least favorite journalist at Pro Football Talk. Stephen Ross hopes to sell up to 15% of.
I did see it in Sports Business Journal too. Just
thank God. Okay, go to Sports Business Journal, so we don't have to. Mike Florio is not good, so let's ignore him. But first of all, 15% of $7 billion comes out to smidge over $1 billion, which is what he paid for the team. So he gets his purchase money back, and from here on out, it's all profit. But what apparently, according to Florio, he previously talked with somebody named Ken Griffin, who I don't know, but declined an offer of more than $10 billion for the team, the stadium, and then the Miami Formula One race. Didn't want to sell that, but now he's got some equity investor on the hook, apparently for 15%. Now it's worth pointing out that the rule 2 weeks ago was 10%. So I think 15% is more than the NFL want to do. And we told you that the limit was going to go up. Told you that, and that 10% was just the starting point. It was going to go up, and even 15% isn't the end. It's going to go up to basically any minority share at some point. And at some point, it might be a majority stake. This is just the beginning.
Right. And if you want even more data about why this is just the beginning, there's also some probably better kind of financial analysis about the valuation of NFL teams and about their revenue. So just to show you, why these owners will be quick to start to sell, minority stakes is because it's basically printing money, because these valuations and their revenue is just skyrocketing. Obviously, always at the front of the parade is Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah. So Forbes or CNBC, sorry, has their official team valuation 2024. And we did this last week, valuations. I wasn't through CNBC. This is Michael Osnian, I guess. But what was interesting about this list is it's got revenue and EBITDA, which is interest before earnings and taxes and debt, I think is what EBITDA stands for. Interest for earnings before interest, taxes, and debt, I think. But let's just go with gross revenue. So Dallas is number one. This is probably estimated, okay, but $1.22 billion in revenue. If you go all the way down to the end, the least profitable team, $546 million. That's Cincinnati Bengals. For those of you wondering about Washington, they have it at $602 million in revenue with an EBITDA of $138 million. No, where is it? Wrong spot. Sorry. 13. Okay. Yeah. 137 million. So anyway, so that shows you a little bit about how much revenue there is. So if in the Dolphins, let's go with the Dolphins here. Miami Dolphins, $673 million in earnings. So if you saw 15% of that, that is 67 30. So you're getting close to $100 million in revenue from annual revenue from your purchase. That's kind of what the passive investor would look like, because 63 plus another 5% would be 30. So it's about 100 million. So that's what you're talking. So that's what you can offer. So it would take, if they paid $1 billion for it, it'd take them 10 years to recoup their interest. So it's a long-term play.
Yeah. And there you go. And we'll see which private equity firm is the first to jump in.
All of them.
Yeah.
Because seriously, I'm not trying to be facetious. Is there a more slam dunk investment than an NFL team? I mean, seriously. I mean, they've got long-term media rights deals locked up that even if they didn't sell a single ticket, would be profitable, massively profitable.
Can you imagine? We're not that far away from this. I know this is still science fiction, but can you imagine if you could somehow, because of this stable investment, you somehow had 401ks and other pension fund investments
invested in NFL teams,
partially invested in NFL teams.
Well, I mean,
that's how it works.
If they let private equity in, is it that far a jump from letting investment funds jump in? Is that really too far of a leap? Because investment funds have all kinds of retirement, funds invested.
Of course, it's a main driver, not a main, but it's a big driver. Could you imagine if you're playing with your little dumb customer facing 401k sliders and all the things that they give you to manage your 401k if you have that kind of plan and because you have some freedom in there, and you could even schedule talks with I'm gonna like a little bit of the 49ers this year.
Yeah.
Maybe
I know I was gonna say Packers. You see the Raiders on there. Yeah.
Ooh, yeah. Or I'm being aggressive this year. I really got a feel for.
I'm gonna invest in the Bengals. I think the Bengals are coming back.
They got something. Yeah.
It's not far from happening. Okay. Private equity, it's not too far of a leap from private equity to an investment fund. It really isn't.
No,
they're practically almost doing that now without saying it. A lot of these owners came from investment funds. The guy who owns the Dodgers, Josh Harris is one. The guy who owns the Dodgers is another one. They just can't put it in the name of the investment fund. I'm talking about literally letting the investment fund invest. It's not far. It's coming.
I did want to go say this on air because we kind of started the baseball season with this story and it became kind of a non-story. But you might get some pitching by what's his name? The Japanese star.
Ohtani.
Ohtani might pitch in the postseason. I just read.
I don't know, man. Maybe. We'll see. I think the Dodgers overspent for him.
Well,
we
I
don't
might
even know if
push him
he's
to
going to
pitch
be.
in the postseason.
Well, yeah, and I mean, he had Tommy John. Is he even going to be the same pitcher? Some people don't come back from Tommy John.
But I mean, I've probably never not paid attention to baseball this much in my life, but he's had a good season as a hitter, right?
He's had a really good season.
Yeah.
As a good hitter. Yeah. He's been
So,
everything as advertised as a hitter. I'm just, but they paid him what, 600 million, I think
yeah,
it was. And they
7,
don't know
right?
if he can. Yeah, they don't know if he can pitch.
Well,
Will
I
he
couldn't
ever
believe
pitch?
when I saw that headline. Wait, they're gonna I thought the whole point was he wasn't gonna pitch at all this season. Now
That's
they're
what they said
promising postseason.
up till 5 minutes ago. We'll see. They desperately need pitching, though. It's part of it. The Dodgers pitching has just been,
What would you do? Just spot pitch him in innings, or would you start him?
Me, I wouldn't play him at all.
Right. Well, with the assumption that you're going to trot him out there. I mean, I guess it's some spot, some pinches and some innings, but it's not like he's been mentally in pitching.
No, and he's not in pitching is not something you can just come in. You need to warm. You need to, get into it over a period of weeks to get your arm in shape. And he hasn't pitched at all in more than a year.
And that's normal pitchers, not a guy that can hit 45 home runs and win 10 games,
Yeah. It seems it seems dumb to me, but they've put a lot of money into him. So they're by God going to get it out of him one way or the other. Literally by blood, maybe, but
well, I just wanted to bring that up because I think it's interesting, but also to say, hey, we started the baseball season talking about Ohtani's, legal entanglements, and we ended talking about he might pitch in the postseason. That seems like a pretty good year for Ohtani in terms of being talked about on our show.
Yeah, I still don't know if I buy the idea that Ohtani was totally innocent, but that was the story they told, and they're sticking to it. Yeah.
Yep. All right, Steve. What's some hog side previews? If they lose, by the time you listen to this, they may have lost, and it will be the gnashing of teeth season will begin.
Well, what I said on the Hogside podcast, which is released every Thursday, was that this week against the Giants, which by the time you hear this will be over, actually means something, because it's one thing to get skunked by a playoff team that has intentions of making the Super Bowl. And it's another thing to have the same thing happen by the likes of the Sad Sack Giants. And so I think this game actually is a pretty good indicator of where Washington shapes up. So listen to the show, released every Thursday, and we will talk about it along with all of our regular written content.
Yeah. In vacuum, a week 2 loss and a complete rebuild, which should be a non-story with this particular franchise and where they are with their fans. It's borderline must win.
Yeah, kind of borderline. As much of a week 2 game could mean something, at least.
Like it should be nothing really, especially where you're talking about everything that they've rebuilt. It really should be no marker, but it is.
It is. Yep. We'll see.
All right. We will see you in 2 weeks.